Good afternoon. My name is Valeria Miramontes, and I will present my final presentation for my Science and Technology class from the 21st century. Our research question was, how does the amount of sleep affect a person's memory? We were so intrigued by this research question because we truly wanted to find out how does the amount of sleep affect in your memory. Our hypothesis was, if people have sufficient amount of sleep, then they will improve on a memory test quiz. We based our hypothesis from a fully research based that sleeping poorly influences the concentration, attention, and as well as the mood of a person. And people who sleep little are more likely to have lower blood cell flow in the brain. And neurons need a lot of oxygen and sugar. So lower blood cells could be the cause of long-term memory problems. Our justification was that Samantha Matheson from Life Science suggests that your brain cells feel sluggish, and when those brain cells are tired, you may be more likely to be forgetful or get distracted. A study made in 2006 on the Harvard Medical School by Lawrence Stein said that when people have the chance to sleep after practicing a skill, the center of the brain that controls sleep speed and accuracy is more active in those regions than from people who haven't slept. So scientists believe that memory skills are shifted to more efficient and permanent brain regions, making them higher proficiency in the next day. Theoretical framework, we wanted to make people understand the importance of getting enough sleep and the effects it can cause in our body. So we researched it, and in our article written by Becky Lynn Monson from the National Association of School Nurse for the Deaf, she investigated how sleep benefits the body, and she, with scientific backup, stated that sleep serves many purposes. The body renews tissue from new blood cells and releases growth hormones. Also, a study performed by Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine on April 28, 2017, they divided a group of adults from people who sleep 8 hours and people who don't sleep at all. The group that had the more opportunity to sleep was able to remember many more memory components than the other group. The variables in our experiment was the independent variable, the amount of sleep. The dependent was the results given, and the control was the memory test, the time to answer, and people from 17 to 18 years old. Our experimental design was simple. We elaborated a memory test quiz based on the different part of the brain. First, we got the color section that belongs to the occipital lobe of the brain, the photographic memory that belongs to the temporal lobe, the reading section that belongs to the parietal lobe, and the problem-solving and understanding languages section belonging to the frontal lobe of the brain part. So for our materials and methods, here are materials, memory test, and a timer. And the method is, we will gather 6 people who sleep poorly and 6 people who have sufficient amount of sleep. In total, there will be 12 subjects that take the same quiz. They will be given 5 minutes to analyze the quiz and memorize it. And after 2 to 3 days, we will personally ask them the questions that came in the memory test quiz. They will be evaluated from 1 to 10, 1 being the worst and 5 being average, and 10 being the best. So here's the data collection. Here are some of the memory test written answers. Here from Regina, from Ana Lourdes, from Jimena, from Carola. This is just an example. And here is our data collection. Here is the one from the recommended amount of sleep. Here we can see the mean, the median, the mode, the minimum, the maximum, the range, the variance, the standard deviation, the interquartile range, the quartile number 1, and the quartile number 3. Here is the insufficient amount of sleep. Here we can see it. And here are the quartiles. So this information, you get it, by the mean. You add them all up, and then you divide it by the number you get. The median, well, you put them in a place in order, in the middle one, and the more repeated one. The minimum is the minimum average. The maximum is the highest score. The range is the biggest one from the smallest one, and etc. Here we can see our null hypothesis, that was there is no relation between the sleeping hours of the student and their performance in their memory test quiz. And an alternative hypothesis was that there is in fact a relation between the sleeping hours of the student and their performance in their memory test quiz. After doing the t-test quiz, our p-value gave us a result of 0.336556. So what does the p-value indicate to us? The percentage was really high, so we came to the conclusion that we had to accept our null hypothesis, being that there is no relationship between the sleeping hours of students and the performances in their memory test quiz. Our conclusion, in comparison of other scientific researches, was that our sample was too small. Here we can appreciate it that in other experiments, like the sleep loss and temporal memory, a study written by Jovin Harrison and James A. Horney, it tested 40 young adults. So their hypothesis was accepted. Here also we can compare the sample actors in our project and in the scientific researches of other studies, that our actors were mainly girls, were only girls, and they were teens, in different from other studies that they were adults and they had an exact schedule, like they had their normal amount of hours and they do that daily, and teens normally don't. And in other sample, in other scientific studies, they are boys and girls, not only girls. So this is a comparison. And the lack of repetition. So the lack of repetition is impacted, in this case, in this experiment, by the stress decay theory and the interference theory, which refers to a competition between early and later memories, with the later learnings obscured by early learnings. So we obtain a result based on a timeline between 3 days instead of a week or more. So in conclusion, we came to the hypothesis that there is no relation between the sleeping hours of the student and their performance on their memory test quiz, because the t-test gave us a score of 0.336556. So we knew this wasn't a significant value because the t-test gave us a score higher than 0.05, which means the null hypothesis is more likely to be right. Our hypothesis was rejected, but we believe it was because the small sample size corresponding to an investigation we carried out. A sample size of 12 people is quite small for the allocations that were done. So if we were to done this experiment in the future, we will employ a larger sample size, more repetitions, so we can have a wider timeline between the days of the experiment. And if I were to recreate the research question all over again, it will be done. How does the amount of sleep affect a person's memory based on their age and gender? Since we didn't consider those specific characteristics in our experiment. So this is it. Thank you for listening to my final presentation of my project.